Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to my Mexican Grand Prix preview. Yes, we really are at that stage of the season already. Just 3 races to go after this weekend. And I guess it's all about threes because for the 3rd year in a row, the driver's title could be wrapped up in Mexico, but more on that a little bit later on. Let's start though, as we always do, by having a quick look back at some of the talking points from last year's race. Off the line, pole sitter Daniel Ricciardo was slow away, allowing Lewis Hamilton to jump in and take the lead on the run down to turn 1. However, in the braking zone, Max Verstappen kept to the inside to take the lead himself. Through turns 4 and 5, Bottas and Vettel went side by side and made contact, but no damage was done, so all okay in the end. And later in the race, actually, Hamilton had a great scrap with Kimi Raikkonen through the first couple of corners, and the Brit made what was a pretty brave move given that the title was on the line. It was one of those overtakes that you would probably attempt against somebody like Kimi, somebody massively experienced, but I'm not sure he'd have fancied a go against somebody like K-Mag. But anyway, that squabble also resulted in the Finn falling behind Ricciardo. As the race went on, and I can't lie, it wasn't the most thrilling first half of the race, but as it continued, drivers began suffering with a fair bit of graining and there was some uncertainty about whether or not the leaders would be able to make a one-stop strategy work. And as it turned out, Red Bull decided to make what they called a precautionary stop to ensure that Verstappen was able to make it to the end with no trouble, therefore turning his race into a 2-stopper. Behind the leaders, Carlos Sainz pulled over on lap 31 with a battery issue which triggered the virtual safety car, and he joined Fernando Alonso on the sidelines and was later joined by Sergio Perez, who retired thanks to problems with his brakes, and Daniel Ricciardo, who pulled over to retire again. What a miserable end to 2018 for the Aussie. Back at the front, both of the Mercs were struggling with their tyres, and they both ended up locking up and cutting turn 1 whilst battling with other drivers. And I've got to say as well, looking back at the highlights this morning, there were some really good fights between some of the top 6 throughout that Grand Prix. At the end of it all though, it was Verstappen who took the win, but it was Hamilton who took his 5th world title. Shall we have a look at some track stats then? The Autodromo Hermanos Rodríguez, in before anybody says I've butchered that, returned to the calendar with a new layout in 2015. The 4.304 kilometre or 2.674 mile circuit consists of 17 corners, that is 7 to the left and 10 to the right, and the race itself will be run for 71 laps on Sunday. The race lap record is a 118.741, which was set by Valtteri Bottas last year, and the fastest ever lap was also set last year, but by Daniel Ricciardo, who nailed a 114.759 on his way to snatching pole position from right under the nose of his teammate. What a session that was. The Mexican Grand Prix itself first appeared on the calendar all the way back in 1963, with the legend that is Jim Clark taking pole position and the win. However, despite debuting all those years ago, there have actually only been 19 races, with 15 different drivers taking victory. The pole sitter has gone on to win 9 times, with the winner coming from the front row on 13 occasions, and the average win margin, which has been calculated by the way from the circuit's return in 2015 to the end of last year's race, is just over 11.8 seconds. And as ever, thank you very much to Lights Out Blog for providing the stats for this preview. And if, like me, you are sad and love your stats, then make sure you give them a follow on Twitter and check out their website. The links are below. When it comes to overtaking, there are some good spots around the circuit. Shock horror, turn 1 is the obvious first opportunity. You've got that run down that really long start-finish straight with DRS down a good chunk of it as well. So it is highly likely we're going to see some moves getting done down there. But as we saw last year with Hamilton and Raikkonen, for example, that does often lead to drivers running side by side through turns 2 and turn 3 as well, before they then take to another DRS straight and head towards turn 4 where the next chance to get a move done crops up. But as Valtteri Bottas and Kimi Raikkonen showed a few years back, that can easily go very wrong. It is very tight in there. I doubt we'll see too much action through the double apex thing that is turn 6, and after that it's all about sweeping through the fast corners that run from turn 7 to turn 10, and that is quite a spectacle, I've got to say. Turn 12, or the entry to the awesome stadium section if you would prefer, could be another place where we see some moves, but that whole section is so incredibly tight and twisty, so although I'm sure some in the midfield will try something, I doubt we'll see many of the front runners taking too many risks in there. You never know though. So, there are some good overtaking opportunities, but strategy will be key as ever in Mexico. The tyres available for this weekend are the hard C2, the medium C3 and the soft C4, with all 3 compounds being a step harder than last year. Brace yourself for a shock. but it is expected that most teams will aim for a one-stopper. I know, right? Rare. However, last year's race-winning strategy was actually a two-stopper, so you never know. Actually, Bottas made 3 stops last year, but let's not go too mad. Although the race was affected by a virtual safety car, which did help teams play about with strategy a little bit more. Weather-wise, well, I was all ready to get leery about it probably being dry. However, at time of recording and according to the Met Office, bearing in mind that this is being recorded on a Wednesday afternoon, so it could easily change before Friday, but there is rain forecast. FP1, FP3 and qualifying are all expected to be dry, but there is a chance of showers for both FP2 and the race, all of which could make things very interesting. Hold that excitement though, I'm not going to get too carried away, because if you've been following the channel throughout this season, you'll know that these forecasts featured in these previews tend to be way off, although I did get Japan right, sort of, but as ever, just watch this space when it comes to the weather. As I mentioned earlier, for the 3rd year in a row, the Drivers' Championship could be wrapped up in Mexico, as Lewis Hamilton is within touching distance of a 6th world title. He currently sits 64 points clear of his teammate and only title rival Valtteri Bottas, and with just 104 points still up for grabs, outscoring Bottas by 14 points would be enough, and that would give Lewis a 78-point lead with 78 points left available after Mexico. Now, yes, that means it could be a tie-break, but as Hamilton has won more races than Bottas this year and that can't change, he would win any tie-break situation. So what are the title permutations then? Well, let's get the easy one out of the way first. If Hamilton were to finish 4th or lower on Sunday, the title fight, if we can still call it that, rolls on to Austin. If Lewis wants to wrap it up in Mexico though, here is what he has to do. If he wins and takes the fastest lap bonus point, Hamilton would be champion if Bottas finished 4th or lower. But if he wins and doesn't set the fastest lap, then he would be champion if Bottas finished 5th or lower. 2nd place and the fastest lap would also do it for Lewis, but he would need Bottas to finish 8th or lower. However, if he finishes 2nd and doesn't set the fastest lap, Hamilton would need Bottas to finish 8th or lower without the Finn taking the fastest lap. Are you keeping up? I'm not sure I am, but anyway. 3rd place and the fastest lap would also be enough for Lewis to take title number 6, but only if Bottas finishes 9th or lower. Again though, if Hamilton finishes 3rd and doesn't take the bonus point for fastest lap, he would only be champion if Bottas finished 10th or lower without setting the fastest lap himself. There we go then. As I've said many times over the last few weeks, it does still feel very much like when not if Hamilton takes the title, but until it is mathematically all done and dusted, I suppose there are no guarantees. If I were to predict it now though, I would say that the championship will roll on to the US Grand Prix next weekend. Even though Mercedes are predicting a tough weekend, I cannot see Bottas finishing somewhere around 9th or 10th place. And if we are to believe them when they say they expect to struggle, I also can't see Hamilton taking the win either. But let's be honest, he's going to wrap it up eventually. On the subject of predictions, it's time for me to make my probably terrible ones for this weekend. As touched on there, Mercedes are predicting that they will struggle to match the Red Bulls and the Ferraris this coming weekend. So, Mercedes front row lockout and comfortable 1-2 confirmed them. Damn them and their sandbagging. Anyway, Red Bull tend to go well in Mexico, but they are not as confident as they have been in previous years. Their concern is that Ferrari are also going to be properly strong in Mexico, with Vettel saying that Red Bull are the favourites. Basically, the top 3 teams all think everybody else will be stronger. It's all part of the game. There's no denying really that long straight will certainly play to Ferrari's strengths, but with the higher altitude, their advantage may not be as big as we've seen in previous races. I will still go with a Ferrari for pole though, and I'm going to go with Leclerc again. I just think Ferrari will have too much on Saturday for Red Bull, but I do think it will be between those 2 teams. I reckon Max Verstappen, perhaps with better race pace and possibly a smart strategy call from the team, will take the win on Sunday though, with Leclerc finishing in 2nd place. Hopefully, another epic scrap between those 2. I'm not sure on the final podium spot though. I would love to see Alex Albon take it. It would just for me solidify his stamp on that Red Bull seat for next season. But I can see Vettel ending up there as well, and it's hard to totally write off either of the Mercedes. So, screw it. I'm going to be brave and say that Albon will grab his first F1 podium. But I really, genuinely do think it will be close on race day between all 3 of those teams. That midfield as well will be as tight as ever, and we will probably end up seeing a weekend of McLaren versus Renault in the fight for best of the rest again. But don't totally write off the Ferrari powered cars. They could be a force to be reckoned with down that straight. Having said that, with the amount of drag that the Haas seems to suffer with, it might go the other way for them. We'll see. Hopefully, though, we will get to see some more of that battle through the field this weekend, because at times this season it's been absolutely brilliant, and we as fans have been robbed of some great stuff thanks to some pretty poor TV direction. Fingers crossed they're going to be on the ball this Sunday. All in all, though, I am really looking forward to this weekend and next weekend, actually. I did say at the start that last year's race wasn't brilliant in Mexico, but more often than not, certainly since it returned in 2015, the Mexican Grand Prix and the US Grand Prix as well have both got a habit of throwing up some properly good racing, which I now realise I've probably totally jinxed, so apologies in advance for that. Hopefully it'll be great, though. That is it then for the Mexican Grand Prix preview, but you can let me know your thoughts and your predictions for this weekend down in the comment section. Now, I will be back soon with more content as ever, but in the meantime, don't forget that you can of course follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.